All right, guys, so first thing we're going to look at is something you should be familiar with, is slope. Can somebody give me, actually, let's do this. Let's do a quick 30-second conversation in your groups. What are some different ways you know how to say slope? A couple different sayings that you may have heard to describe slope, and then see if you guys can come up with a formula. Ready, set, go. Not slope intercept formula. We're not talking y equals mx plus b yet. Just talk about slope. Okay, so I heard lots of rise over runs. That's good. Did anybody else have a different way of explaining it? Okay, so let's think about this. So if I'm looking, everybody look at me real quick. If I'm looking at a graph, rise is up and down, right? What values are those? The up and down values. Those are y values, right? So rise would refer to the change in y, right? Run is left and right. What values are those? Good. Those are my change in x values, right? So rise is the change in y over run is the change in x. So sometimes we say change in y over change in x. So we kind of go from this, we go through this like transformation. So we say slope, and then we say rise over run, and then we go from rise over run to change in y over change in x, and then that helps us with the formula. How do we find the change between two different numbers? We subtract them, right? So essentially what we're going to be doing for slope, you guys know what variable we use to represent slope? Think about slope-intercept form. Yep. M. Good. So M is my variable for slope. We're going to do the change in y. So y minus y over the change in x. So x minus x. Yep. Okay, that's slope. Generally, guys, you will see some kind of notation on them to distinguish which y and which x you're using. Okay, so I'm going to put some notation on there, but let me explain a little bit. So it's y little 2, y minus y little 1, over x little 2 minus x little 1. Okay? Okay, so the important part is not that it's 2 minus 1. You can do 1 minus 2 and it's just fine. The important part is you start with the same y on top that you start with the x on bottom. So if I start with the second y on top and I do 2 minus 1, I have to do the same thing about the x's on bottom. I have to do 2 minus 1 on bottom. Vice versa. If you start with 1 on top, you have to start with 1 on bottom. Okay? That's the important part. Whichever y you start with first on top, you have to start with that particular x on bottom as well. Okay? You guys all understand that? All right. So just some quick examples of slopes. Because we will have to find the slope from a graph. Remember, finding the slope from a graph, you can just count your rise and count your run. I'm sure you guys are okay with that. If not, we can help you as we're kind of walking around. But always double check the sign of your slope, okay? Particularly with positive and negative. My saying I like for slope is read it like a book. How do you read a book? Left to right. So if you're reading a slope left to right, positive slope is always going to head which direction? Up, right? So if you're reading left to right, your positive slope's always going to be headed upward. If you're reading left to right, your negative slope is always going to be heading downward, right? As you can see from our examples here, right? Positive slope's heading upward, negative slope's heading downward. The tricky ones that you have to remember are 0 and undefined. Okay, I have a quick little scenario that might help you remember, okay? Say you put your bicycle on this road, So imagine this slope of 0 is a road, and you put your bicycle on the road. Without pedaling, how fast are you going to go? 0 miles an hour, right? So if you put your bicycle on this road and don't pedal at all, you're going to go 0 miles per hour because it's perfectly flat. If you put your bicycle on this road without pedaling, what's going to happen? Bad things, right? You're not going anywhere. That's not good, okay? So you can't ride your bike on this road. That's why it's undefined. If you put your bike on this road, you're going to go 0 miles per hour because it's perfectly flat, okay? So that's a quick and easy way to remember 0 versus undefined. Positive and negative, read it like a book. 0 and undefined, just think about putting your bicycle on it. See how fast you're going to go, okay? Okay, I'm going to give you guys some time to go ahead and do, well, it looks like the number got cut off on 6. So we'll do 1 through 5 together with your groups. So 1 through 5 together with your groups. 1, 4, and 5, you're actually going to do your formula. 2 and 3, you can simply count. Or if you really want to do the formula, you can. Okay? All right, go ahead. Rock and roll. All right, so for number 1, I want y minus y. So I'm just going to label them really quick. I'm going to call this x1, y1, x2, y2. I just always do the first minus the second. I know the official formula is 2 minus 1. Don't let that confuse you. Okay, you can do either one just as long as, like I said before, whichever one you start with on top, you start with on bottom. Okay, so I would do m. Y minus y would be 3 minus a negative 1. Actually, let me back up. For those of you that may struggle with getting the minus and negative right, it might be best for you to start with a fraction bar and 2 minus signs. Okay, because if you start with a fraction bar and 2 minus signs, you're less likely to mess up the minus and negative stuff. Okay, now I just plug my y's on top. So plug my 3 and my negative 1 in on top. Plug my 5 and my negative 10 in on bottom. So now anywhere you see that minus and negative, it becomes plus a positive, and now it just simplifies. So 3 plus 1 on top is 4. 5 plus 10 on bottom is 15. Is there anything I can divide into 4 and 15 on top or bottom? Nothing. So this is done. What is that line going to look like? If I'm going left to right, where's it going to be heading? Ooh, bonus question. If I draw this line going from left to right, where's my pen going to be going? It's going to be going up, right? So it's going to look something like that. Because it's a positive slope, right? All right, let's look at number 2. So number 2, I don't need to use the formula. I can just count, right? So I count my rise up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And over 1, 2, 3, 4. So rise is 8, over run is 4. Check your sign. Is this going to be a positive or negative slope? Positive. So I'm good with regular 8 over 4, which is just 2. Or I could leave it 2 over 1 if I really wanted to. 2 and 2 over 1 are the same thing. All right, let's look at 3. So this time I'm counting down. So I'm down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So rise is 5. Run is 5. What kind of slope is it? Positive or negative? This one's negative, so I need to slap my negative on there. So negative 5 over 5 is a negative 1 for my slope, or you could leave it negative 1 over 1. Okay? All right, now let's look at our tables. So from the tables, I just need to pick 2 ordered pairs. So let's, I need to back up to number 4. There we go. So pick 2 ordered pairs. So I'm going to pick this one and this one. Doesn't matter which 2 you pick. Remember, it's x, y, x, y, right? So m equals fraction bar, 2 minus signs. Get my y's on top. So negative 2 and negative 2. X is on bottom, 1 and 3. So 2 biggest mistakes that happen here. We put x's on top. So make sure you're careful with that and don't do that. Second biggest mistake is the minus and negative stuff. Either leaving a negative out when you're actually writing the formula or forgetting what minus and negative turns into. Okay, so just be careful with those things. So minus and negative on top turns to plus a positive. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. What's 0 divided by anything? 0. Everybody show me what this line's going to look like with your arm. What's 0 slope look like? Think about your bike. Think about your bike. 0 slope. If you put your bike on this line, you're going to go 0 miles per hour, right? So this is 0 slope. Okay? All right, let's look at number 5. So I'll pick 2 ordered pairs. I'll pick this one and this one. So M equals fraction bar, 2 minus signs. Y's go up on top. So 11 and negative 13. Minus a negative changes to plus a positive. And then on bottom, negative 3 and 3. So 11 plus 13 on top is 24. Negative 3 minus 3 on bottom is negative 6. So 24 divided by negative 6 is negative 4. So M equals negative 4. Okay, mark out what there is on number 6, and I actually want to give you a different problem. So let's do 2 comma 5 and 2 comma 7. Okay, so let's do this problem. So let's put a fraction bar, 2 minus signs. Y's go up on top, so 5 and 7 go up on top. X's go on bottom, so 2 and 2. 5 minus 7 on top is negative 2. 2 minus 2 on bottom is 0. So what's negative 2 divided by 0? What is it? Try it on your calculator. Try negative 2 divided by 0 on your calculator. What's your calculator tell you? Error, right? Your calculator says it's an error. You cannot divide by 0. It's impossible to do. You can't divide by 0. Okay? So when we see a 0 on bottom like this, this is when we know it is an undefined slope. Okay? So you got to be careful with that. When we are doing our formula problems, a 0 on top is a 0 slope, because 0 divided by anything is 0. A 0 on bottom you cannot do, so that's my undefined slope. Okay? So there's some tricky things that we got to remember about slope, but for the most part, you guys hopefully are pretty comfortable with it. Okay? Can I get a comfort level on just slope? Comfort level on slope. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We're all feeling pretty good. Okay. If you need, I'm serious about this, if you feel like you need extra practice on just slope, make sure you see Mrs. Fisher or I, because we will be happy to provide you with some extra practice and help you figure it out, okay? There is tons and tons and tons of practice available for slope. So if you need extra practice with it, please make sure you get that help, okay? All right, let's go to the next page to look at slope-intercept form. Okay. All right, so you can see kind of the notes down at the bottom. You guys are all familiar with slope-intercept. Y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to give you some time and see what you know. Okay. So it gave you a. The slope is negative 2/3. The y-intercept is 3. I don't really know what this description of the graph is because they're all line. Okay, these are all lines. But I want to see if you guys can pull the slopes and y-intercepts from the equation. So I'm going to give you a minute or two here to try to do B, C, and D together with your groups. Go ahead. So remember, slope is always the number in front of X. So for B, my slope is 2. All right, sorry about that. So my slope is 2. Sometimes we like to write it 2/1. I personally always like to write my slopes as fractions. So if they're whole numbers at like 2, I would just write it 2/1. It's not going to be wrong if you don't write it that way, but I like to write it that way because then when we go to graph, I have my rise and my run sitting there staring at me, right? And then my y-intercept is a number back by itself. Make sure you take the sign with it. That's a -2. For C, what imaginary number is sitting in front of x if there is not one there? 1. So the negative sign combines with that 1 to make it negative 1 over 1. And then my y-intercept is a positive 1. For D, my imaginary number sitting there is just 1 over 1. And my y-intercept is negative 4 back there. Okay? All right. Comfort level pulling slope and y-intercept from an equation. Sweet. I was hoping that was going to go well. Okay. So slope-intercept form, just as a reiteration. M is a number in front of x. That's my slope. B is a number back there all by itself. I need you guys to all write a statement for me here. Actually, let's write it on the third page. Whoa, what did I do? Okay. So let's write it on the third page over here by these notes. Okay. B is where you begin. Okay. B is where you begin. Anybody guess what the second one's going to be? M is where you. Any guesses? Move. Good. Okay. B is where you begin. M is where you move. When you go to graph, that's important, right? B is where you begin. M is where you move. So we're going to kind of take it slow on this first one, and then I'm going to let you guys practice more at your own pace, okay? So M. So from my graph up here, y equals 3x minus 1. What is my slope? What's my M, guys? 3, or 3 over 1, right? What is my y-intercept, my B, my number back there all by itself? Negative 1. So first I want to graph the y-intercept, okay, on the y-axis. So everybody show me the y-axis. Sweet. Okay, so down 1 on the y-axis. There's my y-intercept. Okay. And then my slope of 3 over 1. Remember, I like seeing that fraction because it's rise over run. So my rise is 3. So moving up 1, 2, 3. And my run is over 1. So right there. Remember, you take your slope from that y-intercept, not from the origin. Okay, you take that slope to the next point from the y-intercept, not from the origin. You need to get in the habit of putting as many points on the graph as you can. Okay, at least 3 or 4. Okay, so if it's like a slope of 1, I get that you don't want to write 400 points on there. But at least try to get 3 or 4 on there. So I go up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. Can also go the opposite direction, right? So if I can't go up and to the right, I'm going to go to the opposite direction, down and to the left. So down 1, 2, 3, and left 1. Okay, the reason I like to get you in the habit of putting as many points on the graph as you can is because, number one, it makes your graph more accurate. You're less likely to draw curved lines on accident. And number two, when we get into the next unit, when we are looking at systems of equations, it's going to be really important that we can extend our lines to both ends of the graph, okay? So what did I miss here? Graph the y-intercept and then use the M to plot another point, okay? Okay, so on 6, 7, and 8, you guys need to identify... Oh, wait. Those are try these. I think you guys are good. So on 6, 7, and 8, let's just skip to try these down there. On 6, 7, and 8, I need you guys to identify M and B. So somewhere beside those graphs, write M equals blah, B equals blah, and then graph your function, okay? All right, go ahead with 6, 7, and 8 together with your group. So my M is negative 3 over 4. My B is 2. So y-intercept of 2, B is where you begin, up on the y-axis at 2. And then a slope of negative 3/4 is going to take me down, right? So down 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4. Down 3 and over 4 is going to take me off the graph. So I'm going to go the opposite direction to get another point on there. So instead of down and to the right, I'm going to go up and to the left. So up 1, 2, 3, left 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, some of you are going down and to the left. We need to make sure we go to the right for that 4, okay?
Mm-hmm. So
That's
you're
a real common error.
Yep.
When it's negative.
And a couple things to prevent that. Okay. Always go to the right on your initial slope. Always go to the right. You're going up or down based on if it's positive or negative, and always go to the right. Another thing you can do to prevent it is always double check your work when you get done, right? So ask yourself, what kind of slope is my graph showing? What kind of slope is my graph showing, guys? Negative. Is the slope in the problem negative? Yeah, so I did it right. If your graph is showing a positive slope and the equation shows negative, you know you've done something wrong, right? Also, if you are, what was I trying to say? Sorry, I got distracted. My wife's calling me. I don't know what I was going to say. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and go to number 7. Okay, so M, the number in front of X, is just a very simple 1 over 1, right? And B is also a very simple 1. So that means my y-intercept is up 1 on the x-axis, on the y-axis. And then my slope is up 1 over 1. So if you just want to put a couple in each direction, connect it with a point, or connect it with a line. Goodness, I'm a mess this morning. There's your slope there. Okay, number 8, M, the number in front of X, is 5 over 1. What's my B here, guys? If I had to put a plus something back there, that would not change the equation. What would it be? Plus 0, right? So my B here is 0. If it's missing, it's 0. That means it's going to cross the y-axis right here at the origin. And then a slope of 5 tells me to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 1. And I can also go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and left 1. And there's my slope. Okay. Any questions? Okay.